The story begins with a young Naga named Tenko Ganako. His dream was to become his tribe's best and most powerful magi. But this was no easy feat. He needed to best their resident magi, Maranai Gotenma. She has been the tribe's head magi for the last 60 years, and that is for a reason. Tenko knew this, so he trained and studied for days, weeks, months to face Maranai in combat. Over this time, he learned a number of spells, enchantments to combat her. The day has come, Proving Day. Proving Day is when a young Naga challenges the older generation to show their strength, and to even, in rare cases, take over their position within the village. And this is what Tenko aimed for, to surpass Maranai and take her place. Proving Day. Tenko stood at the center of the village, waiting for the tribe's magi to arrive. As he stood and more Naga gathered, he kept going through the number of spells and enchantments he has learned. Then, she arrived, and Tenko readied himself before the match started. She approached him and asked, "Many have challenged me over the years, and each have failed So tell me, what makes you different from them?" As she said this, Tenko looked at her and said, "'Cause they're not me." She looked and then said, "If that's the reason, then show me what you got, young one." After that, she moved back to where they were equal distance to one another. And silence fell. No one said anything for some time, but then, without warning, Tenko charged at Maranai, with him saying, "Nagbu!" and a ball of energy then gathered in his hand. Maranai, seeing this, showed no change. She stayed focused and uncaring as Tenko charged at her. Then she acted with great speed and stopped Tenko in his tracks. With Maranai's act in stopping Tenko, he was left stunned. He looked up at her with an emotionless face. This angered him, and Tenko got back up in a quick motion. He then shouted, "Nyoibo!" and summoned a staff to his side. With staff in hand, he pointed it to her and repeated the words, "Inko Tabo Narimu," and repeated these words. Maranai, seeing this, lifted her hand and said "Nyoibo" as well in a low voice, and pointed in Tenko's direction. Tenko, seeing this, he released the energy from his staff by yelling at the end of his spell, "Kenko!" and fired a blast that would rival most magic. But Maranai, unmoving, with her staff in hand, said one word, "Dish." And with that one word, she dispelled his attack. Tenko, stunned, he gets ready with his next attack. Maranai then said with a bellowing voice, "That's enough." Tenko, then stopping. Hearing this, she then said, "I have seen all I needed to see out of you." Tenko then looks to her and then said, "What, are you giving up? I still got more." She looked at him and said, "I'm sure you do. Mastering that many spells is not easy." Tenko then begins to smile and say something, but was interrupted when she said, "However, I cannot let you take over because from the beginning I had you beat." She motioned for him to look behind him. In confusion, he did, and saw an astral sword floating behind his head. Tenko was shocked. Then she said, "If you can't send such a simple spell that is less than a foot from your head, then there's no way I can let you take my place." With that, she left and Tenko stood there, and over time, the other Naga left, and Tenko was alone. Night fell by the time Tenko got back to his hut that was on the outer edge of the village. He said to himself, "Why? I trained so hard and this is what I get? To be told I'm not worthy?" But then, as he said this, a voice came from the darkness and said, "You deserve what you want." Tenko then said, "I deserve the title, I deserve it." The voice in the darkness then said, "You will do anything for that title." Tenko then said, "I will do anything for that title, that position." The voice in the dark then said, "Let me in and you will have that title. You will get all you deserve. Let me in." Tenko looked to the darkness and said, "Yes." Darkness then surrounded him, engulfing him in shadows. Then he fell to the ground. The night passed, and dawn then came. He then came from the doorway of his hut, and Tenko looked to the village and said, "I will get what I want." The end. For now.